All right. Well, we might have a few more people strolling in, but we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar on third-party verification programs. I'm Robin Hanson, and I'm the programs manager at California Rangeland Trust. And 27 years ago, the Rangeland Trust was started by the California Cattlemen's Association to be a land trust by ranchers for ranchers. Since then, we've partnered with 97 ranching families in the state to conserve over 420,000 acres of rangeland across the Golden State. Our organization is committed to keeping ranchers ranching in California. In 2023, we decided to take that commitment a step further by creating the programs department to provide our landowner partners and other ranchers with additional resources that can support their business. One of the ways we are doing that is through a series of workshops and webinars that bring ranchers, just like you, more information on the things you care about. We've covered succession planning and virtual fencing, with more coming soon, including on June 4th, fire insurance and mitigation options for your ranch. I'll add a link to register for that one in the chat if you're interested. And we also have our signature succession planning workshop, Conserving Your Legacy, scheduled for July 30th in Ukiah. Registration for that workshop will be opening up soon. Okay, that's enough promoting for California Rangeland Trust. We have some great presenters from IMI Global and Cattlemen's Livestock here today to talk to you. If you have any questions, go ahead and just put them in the chat, and then we'll cover them at the end. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Doug.
Thanks, Robin. Doug Stanton with IMI Global, where food comes from. Mindy Birkeland is also joining me today, and we'll kind of tag team this back and forth as we go through the presentation. I'm going to move forward. IMI Global is a division of Where Food Comes From, so I'll refer it to primarily to IMI Global as we go through this presentation, instead of saying the whole sign over and over again. But your story matters is really our emphasis this year, in telling the story of the rancher, what they're doing right on their operation, both with the land and with their cattle, and telling that story to the consumer. When you look at really where this year, you said 27 years, Robin, with the Land Trust. We started this year, it is our 30th year. We started in 1995, and we started with traceability, applying EID tags in cattle, and starting to the process of what a lot of people are doing today of finding out where food comes from, where we're starting from, and follow it throughout the supply chain. And so we're trying to foster authenticity. We're trying to create opportunities in the marketplace for producers, and then we're trying to inspire trust between the rancher and the consumer. It's our goal. If you look at through our 30 years of our history, as I mentioned, IMI Global started as IMI Global in 1995, and then we progressed through that. Then in 2003, we had the BSE cow that created an issue where we no longer could move product to Japan. And so the only way that we could get back into that market was having a process verified program through USDA in agreement with the Japanese government. And so in 2005, we launched the first USDA process verified program for export to Japan in the US. And then in 2006, we actually changed the name to Where Food Comes From as the overall company name, because we had acquired other divisions that were doing additional claims, and it didn't make sense to just keep IMI Global. And really what Where Food Comes From as far as a company name really tells the story better of what we do day to day, and for with the transparency from birth to harvest. And then we started adding additional claims over time. Beef Passport was brought into play, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then our CARE program in 2020, now 5.5 years into that program, we've verified over 1.2 million cattle last year in that program that represented 42 million acres. So that we'll talk also about that program in more depth. when Mindy gets on and talks about some of the additional programs that we have. But if you look over the 30 years from a traceability standpoint, we've verified over 23 million head during those 30 years. These are all some of the verifications, not all, of what our different divisions do. We'll go over the IMI ones across the top and to the left-hand side there. But then there's some additional claims that our Valdez division does. They work specifically in pork, dairy, and poultry, mostly on the animal welfare side of things. And so there's some animal welfare standards. They also work in the feed manufacturing area where they're HACCP, Safe Feed, Safe Food, and some of those kind of things. Then we have some separate programs like Upcycle that can be bundled. We get into secure beef supply plans. And then our Postelcia division, which does our seafood, has a claim called Smart Catch. So we're also involved in that side of the industry also. If we look at the need for and the growing need for verification, if we really look at what the issue is, there's stricter label compliance that we're seeing, demand for transparency from the consumer, and then rising supply chain risk. And recently, you may have saw it in the news that a tea company was sued because they had said on their label that they were manufactured in the U.S. And a consumer group took them to court, and they were declared, and they won the battle as a $2.3 million claim. But the point is that the consumer is going to continue to require transparency and making sure that claims on product is authentic. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and the claims that we work with our program. So the solution is third-party verification. And recently, USDA, FSIS put out some recommendations last fall that said for any company or brands that are putting claims on product on the label, that they need to make sure that those are authentic. And they suggested, not required, but suggested that they have third-party verification of the claims they were making on product so that consumers knew that they were not being misled. So that's what we offer to the industry, is third-party verification of claims that both can be at the ranch level an opportunity for a premium in the marketplace, but then also carries on down to a finished product and a label on a product, on a meat product or any other protein in the meat case that is carrying claims that is authentic. With that, I'll turn it over to Mindy.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Robin. It's a pleasure to be on this. So one of the studies that we look at is called The Power of Meat, and they do an annual study that is consumer-based and market research, and it's one of the most powerful studies that are out there. It's reflected in a lot of information that goes out. So the market-based claims, or what the growth shows as far as base labeling, grass-fed. Now, we all know you look out there, there's a lot of grass-fed claims. Now, the validity in those claims, to what Doug is stating, has kind of been all over the board. So true grass-fed is up that 32% year over year in consumer demand. Pasture raised, 27.8. Animal welfare that is actually labeled through some type of certification is up 14%, but that involves 2.3 billion% in meat, protein sales. No added hormones, we're still seeing that. But it's interesting, if you look year to year, the no added hormones and the no antibiotics have moved further down, I guess, the demand as far as labeling goes. You can still see it's a significant amount of the purchase power, within the industry, but it's interesting to actually see those numbers. This one is interesting because it's different than the previous year. Claims that were seen as a true purchase priority. The number one claim, as you can see there, is raised in the USA. And that is also a claim we verify too, stating that it was born, raised, and then as you get further through that supply chain based on, obviously you're not going to feed cattle that are coming in from Mexico or Canada. They've got to be source verified to be stated that they're raised in the USA. And then, like I said, when you get further through the supply chain, if they're processed in the United States, that source goes all the way through the United States. That end label claim can be made as far as born and raised in the USA. We're continuing down the path due to that demand by consumers in approaching state regional-based labeling claims as well, because it's very important as we tell our story to say this animal born and raised in California. This animal, born, raised, processed, direct to consumer, everything was done in a region, whether that be county, whether that be state. So as you can see, that is very important. And more so as we go to year through these studies, humanely raised has always remained at the top, generally in the top 3. So that humanely raised claim is never going to go away. And it's important in the true sustainability of an overall operation when you're looking at the husbandry of the animals, the environment. So that humanely raised is an important claim. Now, there's been lawsuits, there's been issues around those claims, to what Doug spoke to, not truly being compliance-related claims that are verified. So again, that's a risky area. The humanely raised claims are very important, and they're an easy target if that's a falsified claim. Natural. Again, no added hormones, no antibiotics, and you can see as that breaks down below that, the specific no added hormones is 37 compared to 36 on the antibiotics. The one that shocked me a little bit was the grass-fed, because that seems to be the one that we see, advertised the most as grass-fed. Free range, obviously you're looking on the more poultry side of things for that claim, and then organic. Organic, very niche market at 27%. So again, the importance to consumers is more evident than it's ever been. Go ahead, Doug. So this is just a follow-up to what I just discussed, the consumer trust and verified claims. 63% of consumers want to know where their food comes from. And that doesn't just mean I bought it at the local Safeway store. It means they want to know the true story of where those animals originated at. And they want to know that through that entire supply chain, that same level of integrity exists. So 63% of consumers, that's pretty big. That's pretty big. And a better for attribute, when you look at better for, you talk about the planet, you talk about the people, and you talk about the animals, which is also a portion of our care sustainability standard that I'll discuss a little bit down the road. But the better for attributes, 83% of people are either looking at what is best for the environment, what is best for the planet, what is going to maintain the viability of my operation, the people. And it's not just around employees and the people that may potentially be working on the operation, it's around the community. Are you supporting the community? Are you doing those things? Is the viability of that community there? And then the animals. Now you can see kind of where the animal welfare, buying meat and poultry desires were with those percentages on the left. I think the 31% is, I think about it some, and it does somewhat influence the purchase decisions. Again, we see this growing year to year, which just kind of speaks to where the consumers are coming from. And what we do, what ultimately needs to happen is the consumers and the producers need to be connected. And that's what the Power of Meat study is saying, is that people want to know that source of where their animals are coming from.
Thanks, Mindy. Source and age, NHTC, and natural, the three claims illustrated here, are our main base programs. All of our producers go through a verification program. They go through any of our verification programs. Start with source and age. It's the base for all of our programs, because we have to have, to verify where the cattle came from throughout the supply chain. We have to have source verification at the ranch level. And then age verification is also important, because in a lot of cases, it can forego dentition at a packing plant and allow carcasses to stay in a program that has a 30-month or older restriction. So that is important, and that is why we start with it as our base for all of our programs. Then we look at NHTC, non-hormone treated cattle. It is what the acronym stands for. And basically, this is an export program for the European Union. We don't have a lot of this product that's verified and is marketed in the US. It's primarily going to the European Union, but it's a claim that we continue to bundle with verified natural and source and age. And then lastly, and Mindy touched on a little bit on natural. The consumer is still wanting natural when they're looking for product in the grocery store or wherever they're buying their food. And with it, you take NHTC and then add the additional claims of no antibiotics and no animal byproducts to it. So these three programs are our base programs that we work with all of our ranchers. And the reason we encourage bundling is that a lot of times there's buyers on the other end that have contracts with packing plants. And that might be for contracting NHTC cattle. So they're looking for those specifically for NHTC cattle because they have contracts with a packer. Or they're looking for natural cattle because they have contracts with the packer. And so by bundling that, you catch both sets of buyers that are looking for those type of cattle and gives more marketing opportunities for our customers. So that's why we continue to always encourage bundling. And then with that, you can add additional claims besides these are three base claims. Verified grass-fed up there on the list to the consumer, what they're looking for, as Mindy mentioned. And we have a grass-fed program. No grain is allowed. And throughout the phases of all the way from birth to harvest. And that we still allow when they're a forage-based diet, but minerals and vitamins are allowed. So, but it is a very restrictive grass-fed program and one of the few that are out there that are third-party verified. Then the non-GMO project is another claim with, we are one of the few verifiers for this claim with the project, and people can bundle it from the ranch level throughout the phase of production, without the phases of production. And so it is a birth to harvest claim also requirement, and it can be bundled and added to our base programs. In 3 years ago, we started a program with the Angus Association, and we are the exclusive partner with them on Angus Link. And Angus Link has two basic programs under them. Angus Verified, which verifies that the calves themselves are at least 50% Angus genetics, and those come from registered Angus bulls. That genetic merit scorecard is the other part of Angus Link. And the genetic merit scorecard is a program that only 50% of the bull battery has to be registered Angus bulls. 25% can be from other breeds, and another 25% can be from commercial bulls. So it's opens up a little bit more. There's a larger population of cow-calf producers that would actually qualify for the genetic merit scorecard. And then the genetic merit scorecard can then be passed on when they're marketing their cattle. And Western Video, that Jake's associated with, does a great job of posting these scores, like is shown in the bottom right-hand corner here, and showing the beef score, feedlot score, grid score, and now they've added the maternal score. And what that does is it allows buyers to have a better idea of how those cattle are going to perform in the feedlot, how they're going to do on the rail, and then overall how that's going to be put together from a beef score standpoint if you combine the two. And then on the maternal, they can utilize that either on heifers they're retaining in their own operation, or if they're marketing replacement heifers, it gives a buyer a good idea where they stand. And what these numbers mean is that it's a 100 to 200 score, no matter what category you're looking at, where 100, at least on beef, feedlot, and grid, 100 is industry average. And on the maternal, 100 means Angus breed average. So as you can see, an example of this particular one, that they are substantially above industry average or breed average on the maternal side. So it gives a buyer a better idea of if they're just looking at a group of cattle, they're just black-hided versus one that has the scores that they have a much better idea of and have less risk of buying those cattle, knowing that they will perform for them. And we take this Angus link then is offered through us and bundled with our other claims and it's a minimum with source and age. We also work with some of the other breeds. We work with the Charolais Association and have a program called Charolais Advantage. Again, that's for showing that those calves were at least sired by registered Charolais bulls. ABS and Focus is a beef on dairy program. Balance or Edge is with the Gelby Association. And then Hereford Advantage is with Hereford Association. Certified Piedmontese is a program that we work with. And then we kind of bundle with the Red Angus Association, where they do the breed and source and age, and then additional claims would be with us. So we work with the Angus Association exclusively, as I mentioned, as a verifier, but we also work with other breeds too. Go ahead, Mindy.
Okay, I will kind of speak through this quickly as I see we're getting close to the 30-minute mark. CARE Certified is our sustainability standard, and the CARE acronym stands for Community of Agriculturists Respecting the Earth. This was the first sustainability program that was recognized by the U.S. Roundtable of Sustainable Beef as meeting the metrics across the board. So our pillars are animal care, environmental stewardship, and then also people and community. You know, we discuss animal health and well-being around herd health plans, responsible use of antibiotics. Beef quality assurance is a great attribute to this program. We look at how are the cattle handled, and we look at it across the board. Environmental stewardship, again, you know, forage production, biodiversity, what your water sources look like. And I know that California is very unique in a lot of these areas with requirements and situations that you're faced with, which a lot of the other country does not deal with. So as far as this being recognized, it's truly seen as a sustainability standard. We have an entire suite, again, that's beef, pork, poultry, dairy, and fish. We are working on a soil care piece, and we've got a couple more in development. So truly trying to go across the board where it covers everything that is out there. This picture is of Heinen's Market. They carry our entire care suite. It's labeled and displayed in Heinen's Market. Wegmans is also doing some. So there's some retailers that are actually carrying these full lines. You can see here, I won't go through these numbers, but the growth in care has been significant. And one of the big things that we do is we pull in the grazing acres, as Doug mentioned, as true sustainability land, because it has been verified to the compliance of what that would require. So you can see that that growth is happening year over year, and through 2025, there's some additional locations that have been added. So, okay, got lost there. I
Right,
got lost. I was in the middle
yeah,
of
fast.
that speech. And then when you look at the care process and oversight, this isn't something that was just developed and thrown out there. We have an expert committee. You can see the individuals that are on that expert committee. The standard development went through the U.S. Roundtable stakeholders and met the metrics producer advisory board. It then was created under an expert committee. We worked with the Nature Conservancy. It went to a public comment period so that we could get input from, again, every aspect of the supply chain. And then we had auditor feedback during the pilot periods to understand what they were seeing while they were on site. The audit process is the first year, it's time consuming. It's not difficult. And to be quite honest, when we speak about sustainability, 99% of us are doing what it takes. Otherwise, we wouldn't still be in business. So as Doug mentioned in the very beginning, it's about telling your story because that's what consumers want. They want to know the story about the products that they're consuming. They want to know that they're healthy, and they want to know that the animals are being treated right, as is the land. So we develop out what's called a quality manual. That is done through a phone conversation over the phone, and we're going to ask all the questions around those 3 pillars, and it gets pretty in depth. It's not intrusive. They're not questions, and if you're not comfortable answering them, you don't have to. It's not a pass or fail. It's a scoring system where we look for continual improvement and progression year after year. There's an on-site verification that takes place. There's core, advanced, and critical criterion. If a critical is met, it's automatic failure. So, if you're looking at emaciated cattle, if you're looking at mistreatment, if you're looking at an animal that needed to be euthanized and was not, if the operation is not in good shape, you've got, fences that are tore down. And again, this is very, very unlikely. And that's what it's about, telling the story of all the things that you're doing right. The first year is pretty much a benchmark. And then we look at improvement from that point on. So again, it's not just a program that was thrown together. There's been a lot of research and input that has gone into it. And this is kind of fun. We talk about cattle. Doug and I's side of it, it's all about cattle. You asked me to look at a chicken. I really am not going to be very knowledgeable at all on anything outside of beef. So we look at beef all the time, and the hide, the leather, we are trying to add value to every single aspect of that animal. And so it even comes down to the leather in certifying hides that then go into cars for leather seats. There's all kinds of things that we don't think about when it comes to utilizing all of the animal in some type of value add. We've now launched the pet food side. So labeling is able to go on pet food. Beef Passport gives you the ability to collect data throughout the supply chain. So just some additional market opportunities for everybody that's out there, especially producing any type of, cattle.
And when, we talked about the different programs, verification programs that we look at, and Mindy mentioned a little bit about care and where it's being pulled through by retailers and on retail shelves. And also when we look at the premiums in the programs in the marketplace and where premiums are going to be generated at, producers often will ask us, Doug, Mindy, where am I going to get these premiums? Who's looking for these cattle? And so Prime Pursuits is just an example of a supply chain that has been about 5-6 years now, producing a product that goes through Creekstone packing and then is marketed in about 600 Walmart stores in the southeast part of the U.S. But this particular supply chain in the video sales, in the marketplace, they are looking for cattle that are source and age verified, obviously, because they require traceability in their program. They would like to see them Angus verified because it is an Angus program, and third-party verified would be their preference. They like to see the genetic merit scorecard because that gives them an idea of the cattle they're buying and how they're going to perform. And then they want them to be non-hormone treated, therefore not being implanted. And then on top of that, they're building their supply chain to also be care certified. So this is just an example of a supply chain that is currently looking for cattle with these particular marketing claims. Then when we look at Beef Passport is just a 24/7 database that our customers can utilize for verification that also can be proof traceability from birth to harvest. We have ranches that apply EID tags. Then those cattle are allocated and put into our system. And then from that point forward, each time that EID tag is read, it can be read and then verified into our Beef Passport system for the marketing claims that the cattle were approved for. Therefore, it validates what the buyer bought the cattle. And so it makes it authentic, and we have true traceability on that product and those cattle. Go ahead, Mindy, finish it up.
Okay, so this is just a quick slide about what it truly means to bring those verified claims to the marketplace, trust at the point of purchase. And we do a lot of the assistance. If you are doing direct to consumer, we can help with those pieces. We can help with labeling. We can help with putting the marketing pieces together. So the reality of it is, we are more than happy to work with you at any point in time on the marketing piece, on how to get you a little bit more exposure. Those can be developed under our care side, as well as the base claims of source and age, NHTC, and verified natural beef. So any of you that, are marketing two different types in your herd, you may be going through Western, and then you may be pulling back and slaughtering 20 head a year, going direct to consumer. We can help with the authenticity of those labels that go on pack, just as we were speaking to with FSIS and the regulations that are coming down and their recommendations. So through that labeling process, we verify a segregation and traceability audit at the processor. There are quite a few that are approved, but there's some smaller ones, and that are under USDA but may not have a segregation and traceability. We can conduct those audits so that those animals can be slaughtered there. And then they can also apply for that end label that goes on shelf. So just kind of, I guess, the end of what we do from the beginning is truly from the birth of that animal to the package on the shelf.
With that, Mindy and I thank you for your time. And I guess we'll entertain any questions, Robin, either now or later.
Yeah, I had one quick one before we jump to Jake. What is the timeline in the process? I'm sure it varies based on it, but do you have like an overall kind of summary you give producers?
You bet. It depends on the level of claims. So I would say our source and age NHTC B&B is a very simplistic process. We can fill out the application over the phone. If they want to complete it themselves, they can. It's a 3-page application. We get a contract signed up front specifying the cost. And then we get an on-site audit that is scheduled. We can do that in a day turnaround. If they want to wait 2 months, we can wait 2 months. So we are very much oriented towards what that timeline is for that producer. If they're marketing in 2 weeks, we can get that done and approval complete, work with them on anything that they need. So the reality of it is, if you're doing a care, they want to enroll in care, the priority has to be to get that quality manual done. And so we just have to make sure that the producer has time to get that completed prior to that verification. But we can be extremely flexible. If you look at just a new enrollee that's not in a rush, it's usually about 2 to 3 weeks for that audit to take place. And then the turnaround time we keep it under 2 weeks to that approval point. So if we look at just a traditional non-rush, I'm going to say within a month, that will be from beginning to approval. But again, if there's, they just decided they wanted to sell, which Jake's run into this numerous times, I'm sure. They decided they wanted to sell last minute and they're like, we got to get this done. We need EIDs. We got to be ready to go next Tuesday. We'll get that done. We'll get the EIDs there. We will get the audit done. We'll get the review done and make sure they're compliant to go ahead and sell. So it's hard to put a timeline on that, Robin, in all honesty. But, an on-site verification shouldn't take more than 2.5 hours. And then if you add a care portion to that, it may add about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the location of the cattle.
And
Great.
Robin, and I would just add, a lot of it is dependent on the producer, is how quick he wants to get it done and is willing to get on the phone with us, what we need, get returned, get things signed, get things ordered for tags, and get that turned around as quick as we can. So a lot depends on him. We have people available and ready to go, and we have auditors scattered throughout the country in the areas where our customers are located, so we can address it from that side of it. So to emphasize what Mindy said, we'll do what we need to do, I guess is the way I'll end it.
Yeah. And then what about the cost component? Can you talk about how it's determined as far as, is it per head or there like a threshold?
We have a kind of a two-part on our pricing. We have the EID tags, which are required for all of our base programs because Source and Age is our base program. So that will range from $3 to $4 depending on per head, depending on how many head they're going to enroll. It's on a sliding scale based on volume. And then the on-site audits are going to be a flat fee plus travel. So that then gets spread over the amount of cattle that you're enrolling. So if we take a typical group of cattle that a producer might have, let's say it's 3 loads, maybe in a Western sale. And if you take that and spread those costs and look at the EID tags, everything involved, and the audit, travel, everything, you'll be somewhere in that $9 to $10 a head with everything included for those 3 loads. And we've seen in our premiums, Jake has seen them, he knows what they are. A lot of times you're talking about that's a good 5 to 8% return on your investment with that $10 number. So we feel comfortable.
That's the perfect
it's worth their time.
To Jake. Julie, I see your question on the chat, and so we'll get back to that. But since that was such a good lead in, let's go ahead and have Jake give his perspective. Jake, if you could just give a little bit about yourself. And
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I see your question too, Julie. That's a valid question, and we'll address it here very shortly. But my name is Jake Parnell. I have Cattlemen's Livestock Market in Galt, California, and also am a partner at Western Video Market, which is based in Cottonwood, California, and very active in cattle marketing kind of throughout the United States. And I appreciate that presentation from IMI. They've been longtime partners of ours at both CLM and probably more importantly up there at Western Video Market. And I think as we've gone through the years in cattle marketing, this topic of third-party verification has come and gone. And I think today we probably see it being as important as anything. I want to kind of broaden the scope of what I say first to talk about kind of those of us in cattle marketing and the way we look at things, and then narrow it back to this third-party verification programs. But, at Western Video Market, we work for 4,500 different customers a year. At Cattlemen's Livestock, it's 1,600. So, 5,000-6,000 different producers that we're working for. And if you take my colleagues around the country that do what I do, and how many farmers nationwide, the millions and millions of ranchers that we work for, the main topic of conversation of us is how do we make those folks profitable so that they stay in this business? It's the big picture approach to us. And there's so many, there's different ways that we've talked about, and more recently through, our colleagues with the Livestock Marketing Association, and that it has become a very, very important conversation of how we keep the second and third generation coming back to the family farm? How do we keep these ranches profitable? And one of the ways that it comes back to is telling our story. You heard Doug and Mindy say it numerous times. We held focus groups around the country with producers, and then we came out to California, where we've got 45 million people. Where every day that I go to the grocery store, I see a story or someone wanting a story about where their food comes from, and that's one thing that we pinpointed to making certain producers more profitable than others, and that's their ability to tell the story and offer a perspective into what went to make that animal what it was, and why it deserves that premium. And so when you look at it from a cattle marketing perspective, when you look at it from the auction yard or the video market, there's different programs out there. You just saw Doug and Mindy present. What do you guys offer? 20 some programs that look like to me, all those different logos. But it can get very complex. But I think that it has to be something that each and every producer considers for themselves when they're doing the third party verification. I think that for some of our producers, there might be 6 or 7 or 8 programs that fit on theirs. For some of our producers, it might be 1 or 2 of those programs, and you just have to kind of know and understand what fits you. And so, when you look at the third party verification, just starting off, when you make that initial phone call, when my producer calls me and says, Jake, I want to get involved in this verification. I see that they're bringing premiums at these auctions. Which ones do I do? I think that's when the conversation starts. And I think that's where Doug and Mindy, really start to engage with their auditors. My client starts. I had an hour-long conversation this morning with a young lady trying to figure out what IMI programs fit her best. And I think the first thing you have to do as a producer is you have to make sure that you're first taking advantage of the programs that fit you right now. So if you can be very simple and you can put your cattle in a verified natural beef and NHTC program, let's start there. And let's work towards these other programs, because I see a lot of folks stress and get concerned about trying to get all these different circles and verifications and remodel their program in a time that may not fit their environment. It may not fit their marketing program. There's so many different perspectives that come into play that you really need to make sure you educate yourself. And in doing that, talk to guys like me, talk to your representatives at Western Video Market or wherever you market your cattle. Talk to Doug and Mindy or their representatives out in the country. Educate yourself about what each and every program means, what fits your program the best in terms of the environment you sell in, the time of the year that you sell in that. And then let's engage in getting the IMI, whoever it is, coming out. Let's talk about, where we're going. I will tell you that, as we went around the country and we saw the reluctance of many old school ranchers wanting to engage in some of this new progressive behavior, you're starting to see the tune change in the last 4 or 5 years, because they are seeing that perspective. They are seeing what Doug just mentioned on the video market or at the auction of that premium. And that premium, a lot of times, is their profitability for the year. These folks, these guys that work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Yeah, we're in a great market right now, but for years and years have scraped by and tried to keep that generational family farm, that guy out there farming grass, as profitable as the guy farming a crop or working in town. And they've become really creative about it. Third-party verification has offered them a tool that has just given them another opportunity for a very minimal cost. And so I believe that it's turned into one of the great tools in cattle marketing. It's turned into one of the great profitability sources for our producers. And Doug mentioned prime pursuits. If you look at at the first slide said it's kind of a European-based program, but it's become extremely important in California. That's NHTC, non-hormone treated cattle. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to guess 90% of the small family ranchers in this country do not implant their calves and probably do not use hormones on their calves. They just don't know that they qualify for a program like non-hormone treated. And so if they do, that's an immediate verification. You get the air tag, you can get that seal took off, and that opens you to 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 more buyers at that market that day. Will it always be there? I'm not going to tell you that a premium will always be there for it. But what I do know is I think agent source verification is a lot like advertising in my world. If I don't advertise, I don't know that it works. If I do it, I know that it opens me to more people seeing it, more people there to buy my product. And that's kind of how I present it to my customers. You know, so if you have the ability to qualify, the cost is minimal enough, especially in today's, you know, market level. Let's put you on the program and let's see what we can go find for you. I would say the next most popular program is that verified natural beef. There's a lot of folks that like that claim, that think that's really important. And there's a lot of our small family ranchers. My average customer at the sale barn probably is less than 30 mother cows. And we sell 100,000 cattle a year. So that tells you, you know, where do they fit in? They can get a little verification of verified natural and NHTC. I can start to tie them together with other groups of cattle that might fit some of these premium beef programs, whether it's, you know, Prime Pursuits or one of the care programs or one of the other natural programs is what I should have said back east. And so that gives us more of an opportunity to market those cattle more creatively. If you tie this back to Western video market and our larger producers, that's when all of these other opportunities of third-party verification can really, you know, be taken advantage of. The Angus Link, the Angus Source programs, or we've got buyers around the country that call and specifically look for cattle that carry certain verifications. And so I think it's just become extremely important to educate yourself about these programs. Talk to your marketing professional, talk to, you know, those of us at Western or wherever you sell your cattle, and talk through the logistics of what it takes to get verified, how it gets verified, and then what it looks like the day of delivery and the shipments and that. And just make sure that if you are going to take advantage of this third-party verification or use this third-party verification, you can fully take advantage of it, because there are certain buyers that look for different things on the delivery day and that we have to meet in order for the claims that they offer to work. And so I just think that it has given us an opportunity to make another opportunity to tell the ranching way of the ranching story, the story of rural America, and make a farmer and rancher profitable. And it is amazing to me the numbers of cattle that we have seen move over to those programs. And it's almost like, and I don't know this is not a professional study by me, but it looks to me as these verified cattle have become more available in the marketplace, all of a sudden we see it at the retail level, which ultimately comes back and helps us. Because if Rayleigh's, who never carried a verified product in Northern California, all of a sudden is carrying this product, carrying this claim, natural or whatever, that allows me to sell more cattle in the western part of this country to them from small ranchers. That keeps my people in business. That keeps them more profitable. And so this third-party verification, it is not intrusive like the rancher, the old school rancher thinks. It's not the government coming to watch you down, you know, watch over you and get more information about your program. And I see you guys kind of giggle, but that's one of the biggest questions those in the marketing sector get is, I don't want anyone else to know more about my program. Well, this is us keeping it within the industry. This isn't some program where we're just passing your info along. This is us verifying that animal was born and raised on your ranch, or we know where it was born and raised. It verifies it to whatever claim you've taken, and it gives those on down the production cycle an opportunity to sell it for a premium, which in today's market, I would think more than ever, the professionals could tell us, I would say is being passed back to the producer through these programs. And so I think that's an extremely important point about this, is that it is not, you know, someone looking over your shoulder from like a government type of, there's no conspiracy here. This is salt of the earth. This is an auditor coming out who's usually a cattleman or a young person that grew up on a cattle ranch, talking to you about your program, giving you the opportunity to make more money. And so we've seen it grow. I also think that it's responsible for me to say that if it doesn't fit you, you need to know that. You can't push and you can't stress your operation to a point where, you know, you just simply can't do it. For example, if you're trying to get, you know, them all verified and if you've got 70 calves that weigh 700 pounds, as much as I'd love to tell you to put them all in this program and go on Western Video, that's one load of calves. There's zero room for error in that area. And you just can't do it. You've got to make sure you do what fits you. And that's where the education and the conversation is so important, because this comes back to the way that we deal on a daily basis. We're a handshake business. We're full of honesty. We want to present you with the products you have. And so don't go try to get a claim that maybe doesn't fit you right now if you're not prepared to do it. Just know that next year you need to do this, this, and this to get that claim, whatever it might be. I only highlighted a couple of them. I think we could probably go back and forth and talk about all the premiums that are laid in different claims. But what I think maybe I'll close and open it up to questions or more conversation with is, I can without a doubt tell you that if you have the opportunity to put your cattle in a third-party verification program, it will without a doubt give you the opportunity to achieve significant premium when you're marketing them, whether it's through a livestock market or a video market. There are more today than ever buyers out there that are chasing cattle that have this third-party verification, from agent source all the way through these different programs, whatever breed it might be. When we get some Hereford cattle in that are verified a certain way, we know there's a few guys in Nebraska that chase just the Hereford genetics or will help us sell them better. The Charlet is one I didn't know about that I'm actually curious about, and we'll probably put a call in to talk more about later, because there are some guys that are pretty loyal Charlet breeders out here. We've heard about the success around some of the Angus programs. The CARE program is one that I think has a lot of future. You're starting to see folks ask more about it. Those of us at auction yards were approved through some of those CARE programs to sell CARE cattle when we get certified through IMI, which is different than some of these other programs that concentrate on the same thing. And so I think you're going to see more about that, because the general public, especially in places where I live, a state of 40 million people, they care more about that than ever before. And with the influx of some of the popularity around rural America lately with the different TV shows and stuff we're seeing, farmers and ranchers have become cool again. And what we do for a living has become okay. And I think we're seeing that with red meat sales. We're seeing that with the demand of our product, with the levels of our market. And, it's the time for those of you on here that are ranchers that sell cattle with us to get a little bit more progressive, to start buying into some of these programs and put yourself in a position to maximize the profit that's out there for you. So that's my view on agent source programs. I wasn't quite as organized as them, but that's kind of what I'm known for. So
that was great, Jake. No, that answered a ton of the questions that I had.
Yeah.
I do have a couple more, but let's jump back to Julie's first. Julie asked if it's a problem if you winter and summer in different locations for your guys' programs. How do you handle that? Do you just go to one place, or are you visiting both?
The first year we generally will see both, but it's really in those regions, it's very seasonal. And so, if you look in a different region, like in the Southwest, they may have cattle all over, but it's not just a seasonal thing. So we would generally see multiple locations. If they want to start their audit in June and everything is in, say, Oregon, then we'll go to Oregon. If there's cattle that are split, we would like to see both locations the first year, and then we switch to just alternating one year and the next the other. But again, it's dependent on where the cattle are. If the cattle are on a mountain range, you can only see 8 of them, then we may say, okay, let's wait till you bring them back home and they're back in California and we can see more of them. So it's generally just dependent on location of cattle more than anything.
Good deal.
And to add to that, Julie, I would say that a large percentage of those folks we work with that are verified have multiple locations in multiple ranches. That's not just all at one place.
So Jake, when you were talking, you kind of already addressed this, but I was going to ask you if there's a certain threshold in your mind that you've seen where it makes sense, where if a producer is too small is more what I was thinking. But you brought up the point of that you can start to what's the word? Like add that into another load with another producer.
Yeah, you have to do what's right for your program. And that's what I tell everybody that calls me about it. I'm not going to ever try to force them into a program that doesn't fit. I think it's important to start simple though, and with the most demanded programs. And I don't know for sure But I would guess that, or in my world, what I see the most demand for is the NHTC and the verified natural claims. And this grass-fed claim is probably growing quickly, it sounds like. But I think you got to start there. And I think the size of the program obviously dictates on there's a cost with each of these programs. And I don't know the exact cost, but there is a cost. And so for one load of calves to throw on every circle that they've got for you to check that you might qualify for may not make total sense if you call me and we talk to what you're looking for. It also may make total sense because you've gone to buy the very best bulls and you've done this and you've done this and you've done this and they're ready to go. And so I think it's program dependent. I also think it's reputation dependent. There are buyers that come back for certain sets of cattle each and every year. You saw that on our last video sale. There's a set of cattle that are under great demand that carry a bunch of different verifications, many of them through IMI. And I think they're the highest 900-pound cattle to sell in the country so far at $3.04 at 920 some pounds. I mean, that's a lot of money. And a lot of that was these claims put together with their genetics and their reputation. And so it's about building long term. When we talk about the next generation, the average age of the guy I do business with is probably over 60 years old. But my goal as a marketer is how do I get their kids or their grandkids to want to still own cows in a state of 40 million people that keeps governed with houses and houses and houses? How do I keep them in business? And this is one way. So we've got to convince the first generation or the second generation as the ranch now, let's get progressive. Let's become more profitable. Let's do this and this year. And then let's talk to Doug and Mindy and their reps and figure out how we get, all of our bull. A lot of commercial producers, just very simple. A lot of commercial producers probably qualify for an Angus verification. They've only used Angus bulls forever. But at the bull sale, when they ask them, do you want the registration paper? They usually say no. For this program, they need to say yes. It's no cost to them. The Angus Association has a commercial account that will send them a commercial producer a copy of that paper. But then when they come out to audit it, they say, you've got 13 bulls. We need, 70% of your bulls registration papers. You have them in a little old folder. They look at them real quick, and there you are. Now, all of a sudden, you're Angus verified. It's that simple. A lot of them have a lot of this. They just haven't read about it, educated themselves about it, or have been scared of it. And I think that's changing as you see this market rally and you see these program cattle bring a significant premium. There's a lot more willingness to educate themselves and probably participate.
Great.
And I would speak, Robin, just real quick, I would add in a little bit. I think Jake's exactly right. You got to look at what programs fit you and your operation without having to make significant changes. And then also the number of head you're enrolling. If you look at source and age verification and do like Angus Link, that's buying an EID tag. It's doing a desk audit, and it doesn't require us to send anybody on site. When you add natural or NHTC, then you're involving an on-site annual audit. So you have that expense plus the travel expense. And so on the lower head counts, source and age and Angus Link is probably going to run you somewhere to $3 to $4 a head, probably around that $4 a head, versus my example earlier, the 3 loads of cattle, but with all the programs running about $9 to $10 a head. So that's a little bit where it depends on selecting the programs that kind of fits you and where you're going to get return on your investment.
Great. Awesome. Well, this has been super informative, and I really appreciate you all taking the time to come on and speak to us. And for everyone watching, I'll be sending out an email with these great folks' contact information. So if you have additional questions, you can reach out to them. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.